Welcome to another Epic Cycles unboxing and building of a new bike. Today we're going to be building a Bluerev Spitfire. So it's coming out of this box. We're just going to take it out and we're going to build her up. First step, kind of yanking out a few parts. In the box you'll find the rear rack. We'll put that aside nice and safe. We got some foam for protecting it. A box of toys. We'll look into that a little later. This will be your headlight. It comes in a square box. And then we got the bike. So here she is. Let's get her out. Let's see what's the best way to pull it. All right, that wasn't so bad. Always check the box. Yep, there's more toys in here. We got the seat. And what else we got? We got a fender. Looks like the front fender. So as usual, we got a whole bunch of zip ties and packaging to undo. So we'll just cut away at this. We'll start with a few. And we'll fast forward through all of this. Quick release. Okay, well, we're continuing here. One of the last pieces of packaging is going to be our axle support, or axle protector, fork protector. And we'll have a nut on the side. Out comes the axle. And I'm going to take out, at this point, disc brake block. So at this point, we don't want to squeeze our brakes to pump out the brake pucks. I'm going to leave them like that. All right. Well, there's a couple of ways we can start this bike. I'm going to start it like we usually do. I'm going to start with the handlebars, work on the front end, make it start to look like a bicycle, and we got a seat and some other goodies to put on. So, as usual, trying to keep the work area nice and neat. I'm going to grab myself a 4mm Allen key. So here's our 4mm. That'll fit on the handlebar stem. We can just spin those bolts out. And like usual, every time a bolt comes out, we're always going to put a tiny bit of grease on the threads so that we don't dry fit anything. Well, got myself a little grease pump and just a tiny bit. We just want to wet the threads. We don't need to lubricate them like an axle. And then now, when you put on the handlebar, make note of the cables flowing. You don't want to accidentally put an extra twist in it. Even though it kind of looks right, I could feel that the bars want to pull one way. If I go the other direction, just to make sure, yeah, it's pulling the other way. So that's the natural center. So that's where we're going to start. I'm going to put the bar into the stem. We also have this display. At this point, you can see it's very tight in here. Here's our stem again, our stem plate. I just dropped all the bolts out. Try to gather everything up. And we're just going to place that to the front of the stem. And with just by hand, I'm going to tighten those threads in, or start the threads. If you start the threads by hand, you know that you're not going to get a sticky thread, thus forcing it when you're tightening it later. So the bolt should go in nice and smooth, no resistance, and that's a good start. Now we just sort of spin them down equally. We want the distance of the plate from the stem to be equal on both the top and the bottom. And another thing also, to center the handlebar. This might be a little difficult to see. I'm just going to put this where there's a little bit of light so you can see the knurls on the bar. And if I go to one side, you see the knurls move over. And there it is. I want to find the center. That's a good center there. And now I'm just going to snug the bar down gently. And with my finger, because I can't see very much, I'm just going to feel for that gap. That gap feels pretty equal. And this being a riser bar, kind of like a BMX bike or high-rise motorcycle bar, we're going to pick a neutral position. So when you sort of look at it from the side, you'll see the fork goes vertical. We got this part of the bar. I'm going to have that part of the bar follow the fork just at the same angle. That's a good start. That's kind of a neutral position. You can put the bars forward for further reach if you're a taller person. And you can bring the bars closer to you if you're a smaller person. And there's also a personal choice as to how you like the bike to look and how you like it to ride. So now, I'm just putting some tension down. I'm using the ball end here, but not to tighten, just to preload the stem or the stem plate. That's a good start. Now I'm going to put a bit of torque on it, just to give me some room. I'm moving that plate out of the way. And, whoops. I'll try that again. So as you can see, I'm not using a ton of force on this, just my fingertips. Doing a cross pattern, and then once again. At this point I can feel things are getting tight. You'll see less motion or less turn happening. That's tight, 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 and that one's tight. Beautiful. All right, bars are in position. Next step we want to do, seeing as I'm here already, I notice this is really loose. So there's a 10mm nut and an Allen key, another 4mm here. So I'm just going to tighten up that bracket with a 10mm wrench. Put the wrench on the back side. I did have an Allen key here a moment ago. Did I drop it? Here it is. Oops, wrong way. Try again. And that sound you're hearing is the ratchet on the other side. And I'm looking at a little gap here, making sure that it's the same on both sides. It feels about the same. I think this side's tight already, but I'm just going to check it. Yep, that is snug. All right. That moved a little bit easy. I'm going to try putting a bit more tension on that. There we go. All right. These pieces are what are going to hold your headlight in place. And just like always, we want to make sure we want to do what's going to be the hardest thing to install, or the thing that's going to get in the way. We're going to put the fender on before we put the wheel on, because the wheel is just going to get in the way of the fender, and we try to do that later. Make your life a little easier. This has a double pinch bolt on it. So here we got a bolt that goes through. Well, not double pinch bolt. Double bracket on the front. So it's going to go in the front and the back of the fork arch. And that 10 millimeter. It's actually a 5 millimeter bolt on the fork arch there. And it's going to hold the back side. Spin that bolt out. Raise this into position. Put the bolt through the eyelet. Put the horn back on. There's a nut and a washer. And the nut has a nylock nut on it, so we don't need to put any Loctite on it. And grease is not really necessary. This one happens to be stainless steel hardware. So I'm going to push that. You can see the fender moves. I'm going to push it to the top, giving the wheel the most clearance. And holding that 10 millimeter nut and tightening with the 5 millimeter Allen key. Just snug it down with the ball end. And then give her some torque. That's nice. This time the fender's nice and centered. And then we got 2 fender stays on each side. And there's 2 bolts on the very back of the fork legs. So we can take these bolts out. This is optional, but I'm going to do it anyways because it's close to the ground. I'm going to put a tiny bit of grease into those threads, seeing as the fender is designed to protect from water and whatever you might be riding through. Water might get on that bolt, cause a little bit of corrosion, and we'd like it to come undone sometime in the future if it's ever needed to. So we start the bolts by finger tight, and same on the other side. Line up that to the bolt. There we go. Now we can just tighten her down. You'll notice I do the final tightening, not with the ball end, but with the squared off end. And you can even see by the marks how deep it will go. The ball will only touch on those little surfaces, so it's not very good for tightening. I've mentioned this in other videos, and I'll always mention it again. So just use the ball end for spinning the bolt in. And then finally, the square end for snugging it down. That's a good one. All right. Front end's starting to look like a bicycle. Now we got our front wheel. Our front wheel has a disc brake protector on it. We'll just pull that off. I'm going to try to pull it off straight. I'll explain why. Sometimes this little piece will break off inside. So you can use the quick release to knock that out if it does happen. So here's the quick release that was strapped to the wheel. We got the lever, we got the nut on the adjustable nut, and 2 cone springs. You'll see the cone springs are already properly positioned with a small part to the inside. I'm going to take one side off. And like usual, I'm just going to put a tiny bit of grease just on that so it slips around nicely, doesn't corrode inside of there. We put the QR inside of the axle. Cone spring with the cone going towards the axle, the narrow part. We'll just spin this on slightly loose. Now we can install the wheel. We know that the brake protector is removed. So we're going to aim this brake rotor into the disc brake. And we're in the brake. Now I'm just going to, there we go. That's a good start. And just so I don't let the bike fall over, I'm going to put the kickstand on just for a moment. And here's a trick we're setting up quick releases. I'm going to hold the bike vertical, let it pivot naturally. The wheel is naturally going to settle all the way into the dropouts on each side. So these places where the axle goes in is referred to as a dropout. And what we want again, and this is like any other video, I'm going to adjust this nut down while holding the lever on the opposite side. I'm going to move the lever, and you can see it's moving too easily. I want it to have resistance at 90 degrees. So there's resistance at about 90. I'm going to hold the bike vertical, and that's nice. I've got a squeeze on it. Now the wheel's in tight, it's in vertical. That means that the brake, if it's properly set up, will have no resistance. If the camera can see it, now the wheel is vertical and the brake shouldn't be rubbing, and the camera might be able to look through this angle here and see there's a little gap on each side of the brake rotor. Maybe that shows up. And that gap you can look through and you can see a gap on each side. There's another way you can try it. Lift up the front wheel and you can hear and see that the wheel is rolling, and you can hear no rubbing or squeaking sounds from the rotor touching the brake. So that's great. We're good there. All right, you can pick anything you want to do now. I'm going to play with the seat, only because it's got a ton of screws on it. So here's our seat. These guys they don't spare the packaging material at all. Plenty of packaging, ensuring that your seat's going to arrive with no holes, no bumps, no dents. Trying to keep our work area neat. So here we got 6 bolts on here, and those are going to go into these 6 places down below. And we'll also see, now there's a part that we have to install later, I think, or does it come with it? We'll find that out. That will be for the rear light. So, starting off with the seat, I'm going to take all the nuts off. I see there's washers underneath those nuts too, so you'll want to remove them as well. These bolts I have no need to put grease on. If in the future you find that these bolts come undone or come loose, you might want to try some Loctite. I would think that with these plastic mounts that there's enough compression in here that they shouldn't move. So we're just going to line up all of these bolts to these holes. Okay. There's the back ones are good. Middle ones are good. And then the front ones are being a bit fussy. All right, I can see the tip of one bolt. Looks like I'm going to be drawing that down with the bolts, or the nuts actually. I'm just going to put one washer into the front and the nut on it. Get that started. And you can just randomly go around, put any bolt or any washer and nut you wish. All right, we got the backside ones. You can see a little gentle shove down might help. And we'll spin that one nut on there. Okay. We got the last one for the rear, that is. One on that side. Hold the washer. And then we have the last one in the front. So you can see the seat has a bit of curvature to it. That's probably just the way it's molded at the factory. But every one of these nuts are going to draw it all down, make it all nice and flush. So now that we got our bolts in, I'm going to get a 10mm wrench. All right. You might find that using a socket wrench might be easier. But let's say you don't. This is pretty much how you're going to struggle with it. And you're just going to go through all 6 of these bolts and snug them down. Now, it is on a plastic housing. So these bolts, they're going to feel some resistance. And you can keep tightening them until you pull the bolts right out of the plastic seat if you're not careful. So here I got some resistance. You can see with my thumb, that's about all the effort I'm going to put, and that's that bolt is now tight. So now we can go to any other bolt. And that one snugged down nice and fast. That was a good one. And again, just with my thumb, snug her down. And go to the flip side. Spin that by hand a little bit. Snug. And again, just a little bit of effort. And we got this little one in the front here. Might as well get that one tight. Feel some resistance. Put the open end on. Kind of doing this blind from this side here. All right, and just with my thumb, not a lot of force. And then the last 2 on the very rear. Here's our last bolt. Let's put some tension on there. And now we're good. Okay. That feels snug, as does that one, I think. Yep. All right, seat is on. Let's find out what's in our package of parts. So over here, we got a box of goodies. I'm going to assume the pedals are in there, and the charger, and possibly a few other things. So there's the manual, there's our charger, there's a small toolkit, there's a mirror which we'll put on last. We got pedals. Okay, so the pedals will be marked left and right. Fortunately, they even gave you a little sticker showing the right side pedal with an arrow showing clockwise, and that's the way the pedal will turn on its axle while you're tightening it in. Now on the left side, you've got the same marking, but in counterclockwise, which means you're going to turn it counterclockwise or turn the axle counterclockwise to install it. And like always, we're going to put some grease on these threads. So a little tiny bit of grease. And a little tiny bit more on this one. Just a little. You can use a 15mm wrench or a pedal wrench. So I'm using a pedal wrench now, but a 15mm combination wrench would also do the job. Today, I'm going to use my pedal wrench. So we spin the right one on clockwise. And then we can start tightening it down. Pedal wanted to go on there real quick, just fell off the seat. All right, and I'm just going to put some weight on the bike so it doesn't roll forward. Now we put the left pedal on. Left pedal on, going counterclockwise, and I noticed when I was trying to turn it backwards, it was out of gear, so I'm just going to put it in gear. Here's a little trick I'm going to show you on this one. So we're going to turn this one counterclockwise. So this is clockwise. You can turn it like that all day long, and that pedal's never going to go on. So you turn it counterclockwise, and we'll see there it wants to start. We can spin that down. And here's a trick you can do. When it's in gear, you can pedal it backwards to save a bit of time, not having to take the wrench on and off 10 times. Once you got it almost tight, and this one, as you can see by the effort that I'm putting in, you can tighten those very, very tight. Okay, in this little box comes our headlight. I already took the foam off of it, or the bubble pack. So you'll see, here's our blue plug that's going to go into the plug that's at the front. We got 2 bolts, and there's a hole in the light. The hole will go to the bottom. We're going to take these bolts out. You're going to see a split washer and a rubber washer on both sides. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to put this bolt in, and then the rubber washer. I can spread these brackets a little bit just to make it easier to access this bolt. So there we go. That's just gently hanging there. And the other one, I'm going to take the rubber washer and mount it to the inside. I can roll this over and just prime that bolt in there by hand. Okay. And get myself a combination wrench. Let's see what size this is. Start with a 13. Hey, look at that. The 13 fits. So a 13mm. All right, and then the other side. And you don't have to put a ton of force on this. I want to just make it tight enough that it's going to hold its position, and that you might be able to adjust the beam once in a while. So just a little bit more tension on both sides. Check to make sure it moves. She moves still. That's good. All right, that's it. Now we have that little blue wire. I'm just going to rotate this up a bit. There's our blue wire. And somewhere coming off of the bike, another blue wire. So this is up here hidden on this side. You may want to come around this side over here. And so you'll see a little keyway and another little keyway there. And you want those to align carefully. Don't twist it as you're putting it on. And you just pop in there nice and straight. And there we are. Light is attached. So one of the last things we can put on is our accessory mirror. A rear view mirror. And there's a little plug. Find out what that's for in a moment. I'm going to put this in my pocket because I know I'm going to drop it. So the left mirror, or the rear view mirror, at least in Canada, we put it on the right-hand side. Sorry, the left-hand side. Try that again. So it's going to go into here. You'll see there's already a factory handle plug installed. We're going to remove that. So a small flathead screwdriver should do it. Just gently go in behind it. You can pry that out. You might want to save that for the other side in case it ever falls off. And then this will just go inside of the handlebar. This will expand as you were tightening this Allen key. And I do want to make sure I have a little bit of resistance. And you'll sort of see why in a second. I'm going to use one of my favorite tools, my 3-way Allen key. This happens to be a 6mm. And when I start tightening this, there should be some resistance as that bolt tightens down on that elastomer or that plastic tube that you saw, and that'll expand inside of the handlebar, making it grip the bar from the inside. And there we go. This bolt here will allow you to do a couple of things. 5mm. If I loosen this, it'll spin around the bar. This is sort of a clamp. It's like a secondary clamp. It's almost unnecessary that they did it, but I think they did that for manufacturing purposes. And when you're sitting in the seat, you can adjust this to your rear view. So now our rear view mirror is on. This was a rather quick build today. Cut off the protector for the display. And I'm almost ready to turn it on. So final check. Everything that we've done. Handlebar into the stem, and it's tight. Fender on and adjusted straight. Front wheel on and quick release and not rubbing on the brake. Pedals on and tight. Seat on and also tight. And that's pretty much it in terms of installed parts. Well, the headlight, of course, we've already done, and the mirror. You will need to pump up the tires. The tire pressure is marked on the side. If you're not sure what that is, we're going to take a look here. And there's all kinds of stuff written on it. Maximum 30 psi, minimum 5. These tires, I think, would be very comfortable at about 24, 25 psi. The harder you pump them, the less resistance the bike will have. You'll feel a bit more of the bumps because the tire won't absorb as much shock, but it'll give you better mileage, and that's pretty much it. It'll just give you better mileage. If you go softer, the tires will be a bit gushier. If you're in soft conditions like mud or sandy areas, it's nicer to have a bigger footprint as the tire pressure, when it's lower, you'll have a larger contact patch to the ground. So that you can pump up later. We won't go through that detail. We don't need to see that. And at this point, I'm going to turn it on. So in this case, I think I need to prime the battery. So there's a battery button. I'm going to hit that. You saw the green lights came on. Start one more time. There we go. And there it is. It's already with the headlight on. We got a headlight high beam. Sorry, I think that's the high beam. And then we got the low beam. We also have a horn. Kind of loud. Display is already set up. And one of the last checks that I also do is we set up the handlebars for ergonomics. So, done this on other videos, we're going to do it again. So I'm going to grab my 3-way wrench. And this one's easy to do. You can do it while you're sitting in the bike. I find that handlebar position's pretty good. So you'll see when I reach for the lever, I got to sort of flip my hand up. I don't want to have it like that. I want to have the lever easily accessible and quickly accessible for when I need it. And here's this here's this tip that I'm going to give you. Now, when you put your hand straight out and you just lower it to the bar, you want the brake lever somewhere below the fingertips, right? Not above, it's not natural, and not so far down that you have to reach down. So a simple little tip, raise your hand straight out, bring the brake lever maybe a centimeter below your fingertips, and there you go. And you just snug that bar down, or the clamp down, and we're going to match the other side to the same position. I'm just going to loosen that. This I can do visually, so I'm going to just sort of lean back. I'm going to take a look at both of those levers, see the position of them, make them match visually, and then I'm going to tighten it. And that's good. Okay, well, one of the last things I'm going to check now that we've got the bars all set, we're just going to make sure the gears shift properly. So I'm just going to move. Oh, here's the part that I forgot. The rear rack. We'll do that after we do the gear check. So here we are. We got our derailleur set up there, our shifter up here. So I'm going to just lean it forward so the bike is off the ground. I'm going to go for low gear. We got low. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 gives us all 7 gears. So there's 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. And the other thing we want to check for is overshift, making sure this derailleur won't go into the spoke. So you'll see me holding onto the knee, on the back of the derailleur, and just pushing on the knee of the derailleur. You can see a little bit of motion. Now, if I was to try to pedal it, you're going to hear it's trying to shift off of there. So what I'm just going to do is put a half turn on that screw. So the lower screw is the low gear. It's going to give it a bit of a turn. Check the knee. No, still wants to move a bit. Give it a tiny bit more. Check the knee. Now I want to make sure that I didn't lock it out of that gear. I can't make it overshift. That's good. So it's fine. Right now we're all good. One more check on the gears, just for safe, not safety, but just for everyone to see. I'm going to put it back into first. Here we go. So first, second, third, fourth, fifth, sixth, seventh, and then back. And here I'm going to show you something. If the gears were out of adjustment, and I'm going to put them out of adjustment on purpose, I'm going to wind out this barrel adjuster, and you're going to hear something happening. Maybe not as much as that. It made a full shift, you might have seen. I'm going to make it a half shift. So here's that tickety-tick sound, right? And you're going to find that ticking is going to happen in just about every gear, making for really bad shifting. So what I'm going to do is wind that back in. I'm going to move it up to second gear. So you hear a bit of a tick, tick, tick. I'm just going to wind it until I hear silence. Now it's almost silent. There we go. And when we shift. So that adjuster, that barrel adjuster, is for centering the gear, each one of the shifts between the cogs. Once you've done one, every one of them will follow suit. So now this bike is complete, except for the last thing, the rear carrier. So in this package, one of the first things I removed, going to be the last thing I install. And again, we got some packaging everywhere, and here is a rear tail light. So that plug that's sitting behind the seat will be plugged into this. So this rack is going to fit right into this location here with these bolts holding it together. And there's nylock nuts under there, so I'm going to grab my 10mm wrench once again. So I'm just going to remove all of these nuts and bolts. Lay them on the floor nice and neat. All right. I don't think it really matters which nuts you or which side you start first. But it looks like if I do it this way, I can use everything to hold itself in position. Reaching inside, put a washer, then a nut, and the other washer and the other nut. And before I start tightening things down, I'm going to go to the other side. Sometimes things will misalign a little bit. That's good. This one's behaving really nicely. On goes a washer. And a nut. And we got one last one on the top, then we can tighten this thing down. So this rack goes through the frame here, this aluminum tube. Tube is hollow. So again, those of you with heavy hands, that's correct. Oh, there we go. All right, I'm just going to put some tension on it. And as you can see by the effort, I'm just pulling down with about 2 fingers here. We don't have to keep turning this until we squeeze this tube together. So there's a point where you need to stop, and you're going to go with a fairly light feel. So you're going to feel some tension, and I can feel it now already. And the effort that I'm putting in, as you can see, just basically 1 finger. That's good on that side. I'm going to move to the other side, tighten these ones down now. And we're down to our last one. And now I'm going to apply that little bit of tension to it. As you can see, just using a couple of fingers, not putting my whole elbow into it. Don't want to squeeze this tube out of shape. All right, that feels tight. Now the fun part, we're going to put this cable in. So we got this blue cable. Same thing, you'll have the little keyway there. You're going to line it up to the keyway in the female end of it. And lining it up. Now, of course, it's less room for my fingers in here. There we go. She popped into place, and that's fine. That you can zip tie down later on, or in this case, we can tuck it right up in behind the seat. Nice and neat. She's a bike. So, I think that'll take care of it. We have our bike, got our charger, got our manual, some details in there, little Allen key kit and tool kit, which will come in handy. So remember, when you're new with your new bike, you're going to pump up the tires up to about 25, upwards to 30 pounds if you like, and charge the battery before it goes on its first ride. Plug the charger into the charging port on the battery, which will be down here on this side. You'll see a little cover, and your pin charger will go into that little hole. And the charging pin, when you find your charger here, you'll have your cord that you'll plug into the wall. Then you got your charger with that pin, which is going to go into the battery. So you plug the charger into the battery first, put the wire into the charger, then plug it into the wall. That avoids having a power surge coming from the wall directly to this pin and arcing to the battery. And when you remove it, take it out of the wall first, then undo it from the battery, and of course you're charged. How do you know you're charged? I didn't mention that yet. The charger will have a little light which will indicate red while it's charging, and it'll be green when it's fully charged. And I recommend to fully charge this battery on its first ride before you ride the bike. So that concludes another bike build with Epic Cycles. So we just built the Bluerev Spitfire. It was a fast and easy build. I think everybody will have a good time doing it. Shouldn't be any trouble. You can always refer to this video. Please leave a like and a share, and have an epic day. We look forward to seeing you on the next one. Have a good day.